I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rebecca, would you please call the roll?
Okay, Director Cicada? Here. Director Davidson?
Yes, I'm here.
Director Ratterman?
Here.
Director Underhill? Here. President Thomas?
I'm here. Did you choke on that a little bit? Yes.
She said yes, it doesn't really mean.
Oh, okay. Okay, moving on. We have, next on the agenda is the, wait a minute, public comment. At this time, if there's anyone here that, or online that would like to make a public comment, your comments are limited to things that are not on the agenda. You have 3 minutes. Do we have anybody here that wants to speak? Hello, Al.
Taxpayer Association. Okay, Al Segala, Taxpayer Association, and I'm alive now.
Thank goodness.
Speaking of being alive, I've been alive for a long time, like 83 years. And a good hunk of that, well, maybe 30, 40 years was as a taxpayer representative attending board meetings, the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors. And it came to pass that there was an auditor who discovered that funds that were being used wrongly. This is Rebecca Callan. She was our county auditor. She stood up and was firm about not approving any of the expenses that were being submitted by the different departments, because there's such a thing as a teeter fund. Teeter fund is consists of fines on taxpayers and citizens. And again, this fund is a separate fund. Each department apparently has control of it. And the it's supposed to be spent on infrastructure and things like that. But it was being used as a slush fund by the departments. When they went over budget, they dipped into the teeter fund as a slush fund. And so they always balance their budget. But the bad thing about this is that the teeter fund, since it's based on fines that are and impositions on taxpayers, is an inducement to get more of that, because then you get more teeter funds and you got to increase your slush fund. Rebecca Callan stood up to that, exposed it, and held her ground. And because of her actions, which is based on plain honesty and good government, we have a better county because of Rebecca Callan. Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Al, for that. Anyone else online with a public comment? All right, let's move on to item number 3, the consent agenda. We have 3A, 3B, 3C. 3A is approval of the minutes of the board meeting of June 12th. 3B is a review of the board of directors' monthly timesheets, and 3C is a ratified claim summary, number 628 secretarial fund in the amount of $3,165,604.73.
I'll make a motion to approve 3A, 3B, and I'd like to pull 3C just to talk about something in there.
Okay, do we have a second?
There's, I don't know whether to pull 3A or not. There's a correction that needs to be done just to the title of President Thomas.
Oh, yeah. I got demoted, huh?
What are you now?
Anyway, just to change it, I think we went into a public hearing as President Thomas, and then Vice President Thomas said to come out. Anyway, I think it can be corrected without without discussing what we're pulling.
Do you have
Okay.
the claim summary of the Springfield? Because I don't have
Yeah,
that. in
I
front of
do.
me.
Okay. All right,
I'll
so,
second the motion for 3A and 3B.
okay, Rebecca, would you call the roll on 3A, 3B?
Director Cicada,
Yes.
Director Davidson,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
President Thomas.
Yes.
For the most part, what I'd like to bring up is I see the payment for Springfield and Tyler.
Springbrook.
Springbrook, that's what I meant. And if not, you know, is that the annual fee there? But I also would like, thank you, to have this topic brought to our next finance meeting so we can see where we stand on all these, you know, annual fees and contracts with these two and maybe discuss when is Springbrook going to be done, that kind of thing.
Sure, certainly on the agenda. And just to let you know, that particular item for Springbrook
Mhm.
is you have to do it for a full year. They don't break it down into monthly. That is going to be our last payment to Springbrook.
Okay, the
Because
last
we-
one.
Yes, and because with shifting to Tyler, we're going to need to run parallel systems for a while until Tyler's completely bug-free and up and running, and then we'll shut down Springbrook.
Right, so we can delve into it a little bit more in finance if you want, but when you're saying we've been running side by side for quite some time anyway. So if this is our last payment, when do you expect Springbrook to be done altogether? The end of the year, calendar year?
At the end of the fiscal year.
Next fiscal year.
And we'll be done with implementation of Tyler by the end of this calendar year, that we're on track for that still. We'll be done entirely, I think, with Springbrook by the end of the calendar year. Sorry, this.
Fiscal year,
So maybe at the finance meeting, if we
Sure.
could have a little discussion, go a little bit more in depth.
sure.
Okay, that was all for what I wanted to pull.
Okay, so
Any other-
entertaining a motion?
Oh,
I,
go ahead.
Okay.
I do have several items, but I don't want to hold up the presentation because that's very, very important. So I can do that.
Cool.
We can follow up offline if you'd like.
Yes, uh-huh.
Yes,
All right, then I'll
please
make them.
feel free to give me a call and we can discuss it.
I certainly will.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve item 3C.
Second,
Okay, moved and seconded for approval of 3C. Would
Do
you,
we need public comment?
Oh,
Is it
yeah.
pulled?
we pulled that, so let's talk about having public comment on that item. No public comment. Okay. Please call the roll on that.
Director Cicada,
Yes.
Director Davidson,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Underhill,
yes,
President Thomas.
Yes. Okay, item 4, new business. We have a presentation of district's retiree health trust fund and investment strategies. Jeff?
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the board. This item, excuse me, is sort of a follow-up to our last board meeting when GovInvest presented their GASB 75 disclosure valuation. But it's also something that PARS and now PFM would come in on an annual basis and give you a review of our trust fund and its investment strategies and where we stand on that. So we're kind of rolling this all into one presentation, one agenda item today. As you're aware, the district sponsors a single employer defined other post-employment benefit plan, OPEB. That's a word that we banter around, another one of those acronyms. And it basically provides retiree health benefits at retirement for those employees who qualify. Under this program, we maintain an IRS Section 115 trust with Public Agency Retirement Services, PARS, and U.S. Bank Trust is a trustee with PFM Asset Management managing our investments. At the meeting in the end of June, one of the findings, among the findings for the valuation, although the district's net OPEB liability decreased from 8.2 million in 22 to 5.9 million in 2023, it is higher than the 2021 amount of $2 million. As we discussed, Roger from GovInvest, and we discussed at that meeting, one of the key components to the net OPEB liability is the anticipated rate of return on our investments or the discount rate. Discount rate is something actuarials use, PARS uses it, PERS uses it. It's basically the anticipated rate of return. We use a moderate asset allocation, which projects a 6% rate of return. In 2021, the district moved from a 7% discount rate down to a 6% discount rate. I wasn't here then, but my guess is it was to better align itself to the actual returns we were making on our moderate investment strategy. Over those years, PERS has also lowered their discount rate. It used to be 7.5%. They've ratcheted down over time. It is now 6.8%. But they have a little bit more latitude in what they invest in. But we were conservative going down to 6%. The moderate asset allocation invests 50% in equities, 45% in fixed income, and 5% in cash. PARS also offers what is known as a balanced asset allocation, which is a little bit more in equities, 60%, and 40% in cash and fixed income. Then they have a capital appreciation asset allocation, which is even more tilted to equities, 75% and 25% in fixed income and cash. Andrew Brown of PFM and Ryan Nicasio of PARS are going to present their report to you today. And I'm very pleased that they're here in person and not virtual. Ryan came up from the Los Angeles area. Andrew works out of the Bay Area, so I'm glad they were here. They've also got a very tight schedule. One of the things they're going to talk about, including the performance of the trust and the investment strategies, is they're going to talk about the capital market assumptions. Andrew gets deep into this. We always have a good conversation when we meet. Talking about the asset allocation modeling. And just as a footnote, Andrew has been managing our retiree health trust fund since its inception. So he's been around helping us for quite some time. After the presentation, I'd like to come back and we can discuss ways to reduce our net OPEB liability. If there aren't any further questions, I'd like to bring them up.
Any questions? Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Board President, members of the board. Again, my name is Ryan Nicasio. I'm a Senior Vice President with PARS. And I have today a short presentation just to review the program with what the district is participating in to pre-fund your OPEB or retiree health liabilities through this 115 trusts. So if I may. Just a reminder of who the trust team with regard to the administration of this program, PARS, as I mentioned, I'm the representative. Previously, I also worked with Mitch Barker. He's still involved as well. So we represent PARS. We are the ongoing trust administrator of this, initially up front, the consultant. But we do all the administration with regard to processing contributions, disbursements when the district is ready to take reimbursements. Behind the scenes, just ensure the program stays in good compliance with regard to any changes with the IRS or GASB or state governmental code. Again, in this dynamic, PARS does not touch or handle any of the assets that's managed by U.S. Bank. They are the trustee and serve as the plan fiduciary and are entrusted with being the custodian of the assets. So always in this arrangement, PARS does not touch or handle any of the assets. We simply take direction for the administration of the program. And then PFM Asset Management, they're the investment manager for the program. They oversee the portfolio management of the various pools that are available to the district. Currently, the district is participating in a moderate, diversified pool that Andrew Brown will speak on shortly. And just a reminder of the 115 Trust program through PARS, we have this unique combination trust available to agencies such as your district to pre-fund these liabilities. In this case, it is for your retiree health benefits. We illustrate that through the sort of two bucket system where currently the district is participating on the right side or the OPEB bucket, but you do have the ability to pre-fund pension should you want to take advantage of that in the future. So today we'll talk about the OPEB side of this, but you do have the ability to take advantage of the pension side should you want to do so in the future. And just a quick summary of the program. Again, this was a 115 trust for pre-funding your liabilities, started in 2009. The co-plan administrators are your director of administrative services and the general manager. The current investment strategy is the moderate strategic blend strategy. At any time, you always have the ability to change investments should your investment horizon or risk tolerance goals change throughout. So I know that is a topic of discussion for today. Quick summary, the initial contribution was made in 2009 of 500,000. Additional contributions totaling just shy of about $8 million total. To date, you've taken in reimbursements or disbursements of about 550,000. Total net investment earnings to date, this is as of May 31st, 2024, just a little over 5.1 million. And your account balance is just shy of about 12.5 million, 12,499,000. And then just graphically representing your transaction history since inception, reflected over the years, so you can see the growth of the district's assets through contributions throughout the years, generally consistently funding since inception from 2009 through about 2021, anywhere from about 500,000 up to 850,000 or so, depending on the year. Contributions stopped in 22 and 23. The district did take its first disbursement or reimbursement in 22 of that 551,000. And then again, the account balance as of May 31st, 2024, 12,499,000. And then we'd like to just summarize for you real briefly the OPEB actuarial valuation. Again, think of it as a snapshot of your plan at a specific point in time. Again, this is as of June 30, 2023 versus the last one, the previous year, just showing your breakdown of participants between active participants and retirees. About 136 participants, 73 actives, about 63 retirees at that point. And then the results, again, this is looking at what that total OPEB liability is, about 17,300,000. Your net fiduciary position at the time, meaning the assets you have in the trust that directly offset or go towards those liabilities, is 11,390,000. So the difference of that is your net OPEB liability, and that's sort of the GASB determination or classification of what assets do you have for those liabilities. So that is your net OPEB liability of about 5.9 million. And then as the funded ratio, just your assets to liabilities, about 65% is your funded ratio. Actuarially determined contribution, 1.3 million. Think of that as sort of the budgeting tool to fund to get you to a funded status per year. Any questions on the what I covered before I turn it over to Andrew Brown to go through the investments? I know I went through that fairly quickly, but just wanted to give you a quick recap or summary of the plan since inception.
Yeah, I have a quick question. You work with other districts, other areas, other special districts, and maybe even water districts specifically. How are we in comparison to them in our percentage of liability and the dollar fund? Where are you seeing?
Yeah, I would say you're almost like right at about average. We generally see close to about 70% or so of those that are funded. I would say you're probably on the better side with regard to being proactive and setting up the 115 trust and putting assets in. So you're in a good spot with that. So.
No, and I've heard that for everybody I've asked, because that was a good idea and about average on.
Yeah, it's generally considered good best practice by GFOAs, through the Finance Officers Association. So kudos to your district for doing so.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you for that.
All right, sure.
Oh, you love me to perform with this.
Well, no, I thought you were gonna take the performance, but no, you go.
I can say one
You're
thing.
gonna take credit.
No, not at all. Just a historical representation of what your returns have been since inception on a year-by-year basis. So again, sort of by setting it in a trust, you're able to take advantage of the market. For the most part, you've had positive returns throughout the years.
Thanks. Good afternoon, President Thomas, Board. It's
afternoon.
great to be here. It's only my second time here in this room. I think right around adoption night was the first time, and then today. But I have been here and meeting with Jeff throughout the years, and Rebecca Allen when she was, I think, serving in a similar capacity as Jeff. Director Ratterman, to answer your question, I would agree with what Ryan said in terms of your funding ratio on OPEB relative to other water districts. It was kind of amusing. About a year and a half ago, Eastern Municipal Water District asked me the same question. Well, how do we fare and what's a good ratio? And then from that point on, I've kept sort of my own personal database whenever I go in front of clients, and this specifically water districts. And so, yeah, I would say about 65, 70% is in line. It's above average with other clients just in general, cities, counties, special districts and whatnot. But yeah, water districts seem to have maybe a higher funding ratio just in general than maybe other municipalities do.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm happy to be here. And Director Underhill warned me that she had taken a nap prior. And that's probably a good course of action because really, I mean, capital market assumptions, boring.
Nobody gave me the heads up.
Oh, when I see you do this. Yeah, I mean, portfolio managers.
There might be a moment of prayer coming.
Portfolio managers do a lot of things and hopefully those things in general add value. You know, some of the things that we do, we certainly are involved with asset allocation. We make decisions to hire managers. We make decisions to fire managers. We do trading. But consultative services are a big deal in terms of what we do. And typically, the biggest thing that we do is when we sit down initially with the client, we go over, you know, what their goals and objectives are and risk tolerance conditions. And so 14, 15, 16 years ago, when we sat down with Jeff and we said, okay, well, what's the district's goals and objectives and what are you trying to earn and your time horizon? You know, you had a multi-decade horizon ahead of you. So certainly taking risks that are incumbent with, you know, 40, 50, 60, 70%, some percentage in equities, you have the ability to endure the downs that the equity markets will deliver. And so over the years, we've gone over in our annual meetings, or sometimes we met twice a year, you know, has anything changed with the district? Should we review the risk tolerance that the district maintains with the asset allocation? And the answer has been no. I mean, we started with a moderate allocation, which is a 50-50 type of allocation where we have 50% to equities, 50% to bonds and cash. And we make assumptions, we being the portfolio manager, the investment manager, on an annual basis, this will deliver a certain rate of return. I'll correct only slightly one thing that Jeff said. In 2021, when the discount rate went from 7% to 6%, it wasn't necessarily because of historical returns. It was more so because of, well, I'll blame them, fixed income, bonds. We have had such a low interest rate environment for really the bulk of our career working together. And then in 2021, you're looking at yields, 10-year yield was what, 1.5, 1.7, something like that. We think, we'll show you what we think, here on this page where we have two sets of time horizons. The far right-hand column is what we would be looking at in terms of an OPEB obligation, a 30-year horizon. So here we look at our expected rate of return for the asset classes that we invest in. And we also look at volatility measures. And then also, just for grins, we also show a 5-year horizon there in that middle column. Well, in 2021, because yields are so low, we really could not assume much, if anything, in terms of a rate of return for bonds. Bonds return typically what the yield to maturity is. And if the yield to maturity is 1.7, 1.9 for a 10-year bond, That's pretty close to what you're going to get. So factoring that in, our firm at the time, Highmark, and certainly your actuary says 7% fat chance, take it down a little bit. And so it went down to 6% from that point on. Okay, so that's a little bit of a story to tee up today. So I come into today's presentation presenting to you our capital market assumptions for 2024, because the world we live in now is different than the world we lived in 2021. The Fed has raised rates considerably in 2022 and 2023, such that fixed income, I can look you all in the eye and say, yeah, I think we can maybe make 4.5, maybe a little bit more in fixed income. So on an annual basis, we go through this exercise. You're looking at the 2024 assumptions that we have generated, and I'll keep it very, very high level for those of you that haven't napped. When we do this exercise, we look at expected rate of return. We look at the volatility, how much we can expect that asset class to go up or down. And then we also look at how those assets that we build together in a portfolio will move together, or if they have a low correlation, how they'll move against each other, and if we have some benefits of diversification. So we put all of these asset classes into the computer model, and the computer generates an expected rate of return. Now let me set this exhibit up if I can. This is our output of our Monte Carlo or asset allocation simulation. And what I'd have you do is focus on the columns going from left to right represent our more conservative allocations. To the far right-hand column where would be our more aggressive our most aggressive allocation. You're the one in the middle. You would be the PAR's moderate strategy. And the asset allocation ranges are depicted at the top of the page. And so as just a quick review, the moderate strategy is a 50-50 allocation, 50% stocks, 50% bonds. We then say, okay, well, what's that going to generate? Our guess, our estimate. Third row from the bottom, 6.3%. Expected standard deviation, or the risk, if you will, 8.3%. So that's the volatility that we would expect our portfolio to go up and down on a course of any 1 year. Okay, so 6.3%, that is north of 6%. So if it was just about confirming a 6% target, which is what the current actuary says, I would say, Jeff, we're still in line with the 6% expectation. Sound good? Yeah, sure. Let's order lunch. But today we're looking at other dynamics within the actuarial valuation, and we're reviewing, well, maybe we want to take a little bit more risk. And if we do, let's sort of think about our assumptions, bigger picture for the plan. You're 65% funded, so it's not 2008 with your 0% funded. So you do have a healthy funding ratio. So something to apply yourself for. You still got at least 10 to 15 years more of this. You have a long-term time horizon, not as long as 30, but it's a long-term time horizon. So certainly staying the course with at least 6% would make sense, but you could also potentially explore maybe taking a little bit more risk. What would that look like? The next column over from moderate is the balanced allocation, and the balanced allocation would represent something between 50 to 70% stocks. So we would have to think about 60% for policy. So 60% equities, 40% fixed income. So at the margin, you're only increasing it by 10%. So your expected rate of return is not much of a pickup. If you look at the third row from the bottom for balance, it's 6.6%, more than 6.3, but not that great of a pickup. Risk, only a moderate pickup in terms of risk, 9.7%. And I'll try to translate standard deviation into real numbers in a second for you. If you thought, you know what, we really do have a long-term time horizon and we do have a healthier appetite for risk, well, the capital appreciation objective is available. That would be 75% equities, so 3/4 of the portfolio in stocks, 25% in bonds. I don't anticipate a unanimous vote there, but just for review's sake, 7.1% would be the expected return with 11.9% standard deviation, so a whole lot more risk. You definitely go from a different zip code of risk reward when you go from moderate to capital appreciation. You really don't have much of an impact in terms of risk, a little bit in terms of reward when you go from moderate to balanced. Let me give you some quick numbers for calendar year comparisons. So calendar year, Ryan's slide had fiscal year numbers. So the numbers I'm going to give you would be from January 1st to December 31st. The moderate strategy in 2008, awful year, right? Down 18%. Balanced minus 23%. All right, minus 18, minus 23%. Pain either way. But yeah, moderate would have lost less. 2018, moderate was down minus 2.3. Balance was minus 4. A little bit less, but similar ballpark. And then in 2022, minus 14.2% for moderate and minus 14.9% for balanced. So yeah, minus 14.2, minus 14.9, my opinion, not a whole lot of protection from the moderate. So yeah, I think it is something that the board could consider if it made sense to you in terms of your time horizon, your risk tolerance, and how it just fits with the overall goals. I know Director Meyer has some follow-up observations that he asked GovInvest to run. So I won't steal his headlines on that. But it is something that I certainly could recommend or endorse for you to consider going from moderate to balanced, or if you decide to stay the course, fine too. I think either one can achieve your goals and objectives.
Andrew, right?
ahead.
I have a couple of questions here.
Yes, sir.
You kind of got my attention when you said something about Monte Carlo. So you do all this stuff on the roulette wheel? Is that right?
And when that fails, that's the dartboard.
Yeah.
Just as a backup.
Okay.
Yeah, no, Monte Carlo simulation is a computer. It's a term for a computerized program that the computer does, let's just say, thousands of what ifs. So in a good economic environment, maybe we make more than 6.3%. Maybe we make 7.5 or 8.7. And in a really bad environment, maybe we go down 14% or 4%. So it's not gambling, but it is a computer simulation reference.
Okay, and the other thing that you've mentioned a couple of times is the time horizon of being about 10 years. I'm confused about that because, I mean, as you can see, we're a growing organization. We have more employees now than we did 10, 15 years ago. We can't go anywhere. I mean, we have to be in business forever, for essentially forever. So explain to me, why would we be talking about a 10-year time horizon versus an infinite time horizon?
No, you're correct. And in fact, it was Fresno Metropolitan Flood that said we have a 200-year horizon. Water district down Central Valley, and I was going to challenge them, but I didn't let that one go. Yeah, you certainly have more than a 10-year horizon, but let's say that we stay the course with balance for 10 years, and we have nice returns or above average. We may 10 years from now in 2035 look at revising the investment objective. So yeah, technically you're absolutely right, President Thomas. You have longer than 10 years. But the potential recommendation that I would give to you, I think, could be plug and play for at least 10 years.
I just feel that just the way everything is changing here, farther you look out ahead right now, the less valuable it is. Because I mean, who's really to say what technology, what industry, what life will be like even in 10 years from now? It seems, I mean, it's changing much faster than it did 25 years ago. It's just hard. It's hard to go too far in the future and make a valuable assumption. That's the way I look at it.
So I was gonna, sorry, I wanted to say, in your potential recommendation for us to maybe go in a higher risk, what kind of time frame would you be looking at doing that? Just year by year, see what the results are, or say, oh, you got to stay the course on this higher risk for 5 years or whatever? What would you recommend there?
Maybe that's Director Cicada. That's what I was sort of sharing with President Thomas a second ago. We certainly would look at it every year and think about it. but it might be sort of a quick look-see. I mean, unless we had just a spectacular year where we go from 72% funded to 90-something percent funded. I mean, maybe something like that might warrant taking a little bit less risk. But I think that if you were to go from moderate to balanced, yeah, I think we'd be looking at it for a multi-year horizon until the funding ratio got to a level where you thought, maybe we should explore something else, something less.
Just leave it at that ratio. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I think it's probably a good time to tag team. One of the things that you brought up about the horizon, when we set up this trust initially, we were looking at a 30-year amortization period. And that's why we're getting close to the end of that 30 years. So when you see in the report an extra 13 years, we're getting close to that time frame. So when we're talking about an extra 10 years or so, it's the amortization period that we're looking at. But this trust fund goes into perpetuity. The goal at the end of the amortization period is to be fully funded. And that's what we've kind of been looking at. And as Andrew said earlier, we chose moderate and, we stuck with it through good times and not so good times, mostly all good times. But now is an opportunity, once we got this recent valuation, is come back and take a look at options that we can do. And one of the things I wanted to bring up, and I'll let Andrew come back up here because I think this is important for him to talk about. I reached out to GovInvest and asked them to run a new valuation based on our existing numbers to plug in a 6.5% discount rate. It's right in between. It's similar to the balance. Balance is expecting 6.6. So I ratcheted it down to 6.5%. And they came back to me this morning. What has happened is it reduced our total OPEB liability by just about $980,000 by running these numbers. And it ended up reducing our actuarially determined contribution. That's how much we're expected to make each year. It brought it down from 1.4 million down to 981,000, a difference of savings of $383,000. Now, one of the things that we pointed out last time is the ADC that they project, not only it is the total amount of contributions the district makes, which includes our pay-go, because we make payments to our existing retirees. We don't take money out of the trust. The only time we took money out of the trust was back in 21 when you adjusted the retiree health benefit package, and we needed some of that money to pay for those costs. After that, we haven't made a contribution. So all it's been doing is building off of those revenues that Andrew's making, all the good money he's making us. So if we look at that, originally based on the valuation, the contribution deficiency between the ADC and what we actually contribute, pay-go, was $475,000. Taking it to the next step, at 6.5%, it would drop that down to 91,000, the additional contribution we have to make. So it does help us in ways of a valuation. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong. A valuation is a snapshot in time. We're looking at a long horizon. As Andrew said, we've got time to look at this to see what we want to do. And I'm not asking for a snap judgment here, but we do have an opportunity to take a look at our investment strategy going from a moderate to a balance. And as Ryan mentioned, your board authorized us to also create a 115 trust for our PERS. We don't fund it now, but it's through PARS and PFM. If we want to have that and have funds to be able to fund it, we probably also want to pick the same investment strategy. Again, it's a longer horizon, but that's an option. One other thing that I looked at is, as Ryan said, our funding ratio right now is about 66%, 65.7 to be exact. If we go to the balance, it bumps it up to 69.6, just under 70%, which is on the good side for water districts, right? Or agencies. Do you have anything to add?
Just Good questions.
I have a question or comment. I'd like to, I noticed that we're not, is this for discussion, this agenda item here? Or are we making the board giving direction or guidance on, going from whether to stay at moderate, go to balanced? Is there somewhere in between? Are those the two choices we have, or recommendations? And if we're looking to make a decision here or give direction, I'd like to hear from all three of you on, what your recommendation as the gurus, some guidance from you, if you're looking for guidance from
Sure.
us.
This is a two-part discussion. Obviously, the first part was a presentation of a review of our PARS trust, its performance over the years, and a discussion of the asset allocation models that we're using. So we've done that. They've gone through that. If you want to, and I wanted to bring up the investment strategies just as a discussion item. We can bring it back if you'd like, or you can provide direction to us. I did talk about in the staff report that we'd be discussing strategies, but I didn't know the board's desire to address it right away or have us bring it back. So as Andrew mentioned, we don't have to, and I talked about it, we don't have to make a snap decision. We can tell them anytime within early this fiscal year, so we can take a look at if we're going to make changes, but it will not affect this valuation. In fact, it won't affect the full valuation until the next full valuation, which is 2026. So
It's not agenda.
no. And so I just wanted to have this as a discussion, and you can get their expert opinion, and then we can bring it back.
Okay. Yeah, get the expert opinion, and I don't know that we need to bring it back if, we most likely give direction if we're given, direction. If we're given ideas and recommendations, I think we can give directions here. We don't want to put Bertha through another nap to get ready for this thing.
Yeah, I can leave that to you.
Okay, well, we have one director saying that we should try to make a decision today, and one director saying we can't because it's not agenda.
It's agendized as a presentation, and I think this kind of a decision merits some more time to evaluate. So I think treating this as a presentation discussion item, and then if we want to bring back a more detailed recommendation, we can agendize it that way.
But I have a question. With this being an election year, is that kind of in consideration when you looked at the performance on these investments? Does it hurt it? I mean, does it go one way or the other because of an election year? I mean, if we had a new administration or they stayed, I mean, I don't know.
Depends on the outcome.
But did you somehow take any of that into consideration? Like if we stayed the course where we are today versus if somebody else came in? I mean, does that matter? I don't know. I'm not being political. I'm just curious if that matters.
I know, I don't sense your questions political at all. We would take that 0% into consideration in making this recommendation today, or just posing the discussion item today. It has zero relevance with a 10, 20, 30, 40-year horizon.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, we the next 4 years could be great, could be bad, could be great or bad, depending, it may not matter who's in the White House.
But that being happening, really, you don't plug that in anywhere here to come up with any projections.
We plug that in to how we deploy the assets on a go-forward basis. So today, we're in a 40 to 60% equity, 40 to 60% bond portfolio. Depending upon what could happen, let's say we get some certainty by the second week in November of what who's in charge, and then we think about their policies, we certainly could move the assets within the portfolio that we manage for the district in a certain way. But our bigger picture recommendation, hey, based on your goals, objectives, risk tolerance, no, political considerations not a factor at all.
Thank you.
Excuse me, and the dialogue or communication between you and Jeff is daily,
We definitely, I would say over the last 13 years, except for the Rebecca Callan period of time, we definitely get together once a year. We probably talk 2 other times on the phone. And so it's certainly not daily. I mean, this is long-term time horizon. But when something big happens, good or bad, we'll connect, reach out, and we'll have maybe an official portfolio manager, PARS staff overview on an annual basis. And it was the same thing with Rebecca.
Were you asking them for a recommendation?
Pardon me?
Did you ask them for a recommendation?
I
Through
Scott did.
Scott did? Okay.
I have a question which you
Okay.
can.
It's time. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just kind of curious, if, before we, bring this back to the board on an agendized item to make a decision, I'd be curious to know, like, I understand where we stand, in a reasonably good position, as to where we are funded. I would be interested to know, what other districts are in this similar situation with us. What risk level are they taking? What's the industry standard for bumping your risk up if you're moderately funded, or if you're low funded, or if you're overfunded? If you're overfunded, I assume you take less risk. I'd just be curious to know where we stand on the risk evaluation with other water districts as well.
This would be anecdotal. I would say a 50-50 would be slightly less risk than maybe other clients, and specifically other water districts, because that's what the question said. So I'm going to say other water districts, maybe 60-40, 65-35, something in that ballpark. Yeah, and of course, the recommendation for an asset allocation is the discount rate target. So that's usually, well, that is the driver. But to answer your question, Director Davidson, 50-50 is maybe slightly on the lower side.
Okay, well, Jeff mentioned a moment ago that the objective at the beginning was to make sure that you had it properly funded, totally funded. Is there any, not danger, but is there any negative side to having it overfunded? If we got really lucky and made fantastic returns, and we have more money in the account than it would be required at any given moment to retire.
So Thomas, I wouldn't say that there's danger, but there might be other strategies, right? So let's say, for example, you were a water district in the Central Valley that was 138% funded. You might very well stay 60-40, but you might look to take distributions, reimbursements from the portfolio. It's kind of like how an endowment works, where you have a funded endowment where you take 3-4-5%, some percentage, reimburse yourself. And that's sort of the mechanism that you really look to, that OPEB trust. It generates a certain return that then you take to reimburse yourself. And in that situation, Director Davidson, just because you're overfunded, you could downshift risk, but now you probably want to keep it at that level, because, just simply, I'm going to try to make 6 to 7. I'm going to take 4 to 5, and I'll let that 2 to 3% residual compound. And of course, that works great when the markets go up, but when it goes down, the risk then is you see a decline in your value of the portfolio.
Okay, any other questions here?
I'm good.
Okay, and we're not making any recommendation here, so we don't have to open this up for public comments?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Do we have any public comment on this item?
Mr. Gallen again. I don't have much of a comment, but I'm curious. This seems to imply that both employees with the district get free medical care after they retire. Is that true, or is it partially true? And if it is true, where does that funding come from? Thank you.
So there's different, we've changed the post-employment health benefit 3 years ago now. Prior to that, the district participated in a statewide program that's created by state law that provided employees different levels of health benefit after they retire, depending on how long they're vested in PERS, how long they spent here at the district. So different, depending on different criteria. But yeah, if they spent 20 years at the district or 20 years in PERS and more than 5 years at CCWD, then their retiree health benefit is funded during retirement, and then lesser amounts depending on the amount of time in service. We don't provide that defined benefit benefit anymore. We provide a defined contribution. So we make a contribution to a retiree health savings account that doesn't incur, you know, a defined benefit cost after the employee retires anymore. So we no longer offer that defined benefit program. We offer a defined contribution program.
All right, any other public comment? Oh, Mr. Rogers, you have a comment?
Yes, hi, Michael Rogers, Valley Springs. Andrew, can you put that slide? Can I see that slide that was just up again? So my question is a couple of things. The standard deviation, is that calculated from historical data, last 10 years, last 20 years? How's that determined?
It's determined on an annual basis, and much of the annual determination certainly looks at near term, well, not near term, let's just say 10 to 15 year look back.
Okay, so in a given year, the risk could be potentially 2 or 3 standard deviations. Is that a fair potential?
Yeah, let me lay it out in terms of the PARS moderate strategy.
Okay.
So one standard deviation, or 65% of the time, you would add 8.3 to 6.3, and you would say, okay, 65% of the time I am going to get between a positive 14.6 and a -2. So -2% to positive 14.6%, that would be where 65% of my observations, or 67% of my observations should reside. So the more narrow your standard deviation is, the less, you know, in theory, the less volatility you have around that expected curve. Yeah.
Okay. The other question, you know, and this is just for the board, it's really a comment. You know, I follow the markets fairly closely, and if you follow the markets, you know that there's a top 5 or 10 companies that where the S&P is heavily weighted to those 5 or 10 companies. So we're at a state currently that historically has rarely happened. So that means that the volatility index is much greater than maybe it has been in the past, the S&P specifically. So I would encourage the board to be very careful, because, you know, obviously the NASDAQ is at an all-time high right now. And secondly, I would be very careful with REITs as well. Commercial real estate, a lot of predictions about the state of commercial real estate. I personally don't have any investments in real estate investment trusts for that reason. So, you know, I think, Jeff, the moderate course that you've chosen, or the board has chosen over the recent years, is a good one. And I just be very careful about being any more aggressive than what you currently are, and maybe think about, you know, not having anything in REITs at this point. But there's definitely some storm clouds out on the horizon, again, because of the overweighted of the S&P. So just be very cautious as we move forward in your discussions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Any other public comments online? All right, Thank you, gentlemen, very much for your presentation. Jeff stayed awake the whole time. All right. Let's move on to 4B. We have a discussion plus an action, possible action on regarding the budget adjustments for PBI engineering consultant for the Copper Cove Clearwell and B tank. This is a capital improvement project number 11083C. Just for the record, this item came before the engineering committee, and we decided to send it to the board with our recommendation for approval. So go ahead.
Thank you, and good afternoon. So yeah, today is President Thomas was explaining PBI consultants. They're doing the construction management on our Copper Cove B tank of Clearwell project, and they're also working on some other designs for us. And to date, the construction's gone very smoothly. Working with PBI, we're actually I think like a negative $150,000 on change orders. So they've been doing a really good job of managing the costs and schedule. There's been a lot of changes on the project. There was a lot of piping changes, simplifying the piping in Clearwell and the B tank. That took a lot of re-engineering. And then there's been revisions to the pipe that was connecting to the C transmission pipeline that's in design. We reduced the height of the B tank so they match. So that was another change. There's been a lot of, we had to get a variance from the Division of Drinking Water because some of the storm drains were too close to the water lines, and there's a separation requirement. So we had to get, there was a lot of work involved with working with the Division of Drinking Water. And they've kind of provided more construction management services than they were probably originally expecting. I wasn't involved in this. I inherited this project from Charles when he retired. So, and then we also have the geotech and special inspections, which is the welding and the foundation inspections. So we had to do some overacts at the B tank site, which required a lot more geotech. So I think PBI is doing a great job, and I was just asking the board that we approve this contract amendment.
Move for acceptance.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve this item. Would you please?
Public comment.
Damn it. Public comment on this item. Yes, yeah, the dollar amount is increased 145,000, but we have credit of
Credit
157.
Yeah, it's a
I
change of
just didn't
scope.
see it on here. Okay.
That's up and down. Any public comment on this item? Nope. All right. So you want to pull the board on this one?
Director Cicada,
Yes.
Director Davidson,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
President Thomas.
Yes. Moving on, we have item 4C, discussion and action regarding La Contenta wastewater treatment plant improvements, engineering design consultant selection for the Biolac and Clarifier improvements. This is a capital improvement project 15097. Kevin.
So this one, we put an RFP out for design services, and we actually visited the site with, I think, 5 or 6 different consultants, and only 2 proposed on the project because it's kind of a specialized item. So we're calling this project the Phase 3 improvements at the La Contenta wastewater treatment plant. So the Phase 1 was the initial construction of the plant in the early 90s. The Phase 2 was the when we went from chlorine contact basins to the UV disinfection, which happened some years ago. And then this is the Phase 3 improvements. So we do that to not kind of confuse the previous projects. So currently the district has 1,054 connections in the La Contenta service area, which equals 1,110 equivalent dwelling units, which is equivalent standard single family home. So like the commercial accounts may have multiple EDUs. So the current permitted capacity of the plant is 200,000 gallons dry weather flow. So that's at 165 gallons per house. And that gives you 1,212 EDUs is what's our capacity at that plant. So currently, we have commitments for 1,577 connections in that area. So
Where do you come up with that?
so that was so that's the new construction commitments for Gold Creek, LGI, the Jalen Elementary School, and also the infill lots there in the completed subdivisions.
What about what about the general plan?
So the general plan, that's full build out. So that's 2,250 EDUs. So we took that, we did a detailed pre-design report where we calculate all the addresses that are involved in here. And we figure out the quantity of EDUs. So
Based on the zoning,
Yes.
Land use.
Yeah,
plan?
based on the most recent, it's changed since the 2018 master plan. There were some minor changes based on the county's new plan.
Okay.
Kevin, how about the state requirements to ratchet down the assumed consumption from 160 down?
That's I think we're talking about that here in one of the upcoming board meetings, but yeah, there's 155 gallons per person is the recommendation for your inside water use. But so we're at 165 is what we use based on. So basically, it's like a little over 3 people per household. So I think that's in line with what we used to be at 195, and now we're down to 165. So we've lowered our threshold.
You've lowered it to 163.
165 is what we use, yeah, for design of wastewater treatment plants. For design pipelines, we still use 195.
Okay.
So that brings me to the next point. That would be the phase 4 improvements would be to full build out of the 2,250, which gives you 450,000 gallons a day. So that's not this project. They'll take substantial improvements in effluent storage and disposal of that water. Because right now we don't have that wintertime storage to store all that treated water during the non-irrigation season. This
Kevin,
project's
you mentioned phase 4, just a timing in your mind or in
we
engineers department mind, when would that conceivably come?
we're not supposed to design for stuff. We're supposed to design for what we know is happening.
Right.
So we can't go out and design for stuff that's
No, so we
it's
talked
not
about
happening. So we have these 3 or 4 subdivisions that we made commitments over the last several years for, and none of them. I mean, Gold Creek 3 has got the housing pads, but nothing's been done on it. LGI has been talking about going into construction. They haven't. So this is a plan so that we have enough capacity when these already commitments already made. And the other part of this project is to repair the failing infrastructure we have already. The Biolac that we have in place is failing. It's lived.
So does phase 3 include LGI and the build out for
Yes.
Gold Creek 3?
Yeah, it would include all that.
Okay.
So we can do all that without worrying about the effluent storage. We got enough storage for that.
So phase 4 is 10 years?
That'd be
in the
like,
future?
yeah, 10, 20, 30 years out.
Okay, thank you.
But I just didn't want to lead you to believe this was the full build out. This is for phase 3. It's getting us to the commitments we have.
So if we build this, obviously this is the plan. If we build this, we're gonna add 477 units of capacity.
Yeah, I believe, yeah,
So that's, I mean, it's not a complete, project. That, because we need additional land acquisition for spray field. Where are the missing?
no, that would get us to the commitment we have. So this project's second Biolac, another clarifier, rehabbing the existing Biolac, adding some piping so we can connect the 2 together, and new electrical, new blowers.
Well, we need to get, back at that Contenta master plan and to our current capacity fees inadequate, to expand at the price that you guys have got put on this. So we need to get that formulated or agendized and looked at. Do we agree on that? I mean, it's simple math. It's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have enough money in our budget for this, this design effort, for the base design effort. There's some, additional items like the clarifier that's, conventional circular clarifier that there's an add-on for that design and stuff. That's really what we want is the separate clarifier. But yeah, well, there's enough for the base design. There's not enough for the environmental. So we'll have to get proposals for the environmental. We'll have to bring it back with a small budget adjustment to include those items.
I mean, I recognize that not all of this is capacity, new capacity driven. We've got deficiencies at the facility today with the existing customers. So part of this, it won't all be paid for with capacity fees, correct?
Yeah, it's a combination of repairing what we have and building some capacity.
I just want to make a recommendation now that we get the La Contenta master plan on our update schedule in a reasonable amount of time. So we, if we do get one of these developments to take off, that we're collecting an adequate amount of money to construct this facility.
So we just went to TUD's wastewater facility here a couple weeks ago. They built 2 Biolacs, 2 clarifiers. They had some small trickling filters and a chlorine contact basin in a new office building. So it's kind of the same project we have. They treat 3 times as much wastewater as we do it. We will at full build out of this activated sludge system. But I mean, it was $42 million over there. So I mean, these aren't cheap projects, but they're very important.
I'm just amazed about the RFP. Kevin, you said how many did these 2 that responded and provided us with a bid, did they show up at the walkthrough?
Yeah, they showed up the walkthrough, and then
How many others were with them? How many other firms?
Blackwater, Corollo, Hydro Science. There was I think there were 6 total that visited.
And then
the site.
only two submitted the bids. How come they're so far? Do they both follow the same RFP and to the detail, and they came up one more than twice the other? And the Hydro Science looks like we've done a lot of work with them in the past. That's awesome. But what is Stantec doing? Why
So
would
Stantec had, I think, $450,000. It was their construction management. So I figured I think they were thinking more construction management and not construction services. So if you take off $450,000, you're down to 1.4, which is still a lot higher. And then you got to add another $110,000 back into Hydro Science because they included it as an additive item, which the other contractor didn't. And then they kind of looked at it as a different project, Stantec. They looked at a more robust system. It was a separate anox basin. Because in this new Biolac, that's other thing I didn't mention here is the nutrient removal is a really important thing. The nutrients are considered like a pollutant. So we need to get those nutrients out. Right now, we changed the sample location of our lower effluent pond to try to get our nitrogen levels down to where they meet our permit conditions. But if you ever want to do a surface water discharge or anything like that, we're well above any kind of level you would need for the nitrogen removal. So these new Biolac basins need to have ox and anox basins within them, which means areas where you blow air in and areas where you don't, because different bugs like different water conditions.
You're getting into the weeds and the details of the project. I'm trying to get back to the RFP and what can we put in our RFP to provide all 6 of them that we'd have to walk through more detail so that they can be closer and so that they're all bidding the same thing. Is there something that in this RFP that was sent out that we could provide more details, provide more stats to alleviate this?
Yeah, I think Hydro Science followed our RFP, and I think that Stantec didn't. They actually called me and told me they had a better way of doing it, and they asked if that's okay to propose that. And it probably is a more robust system with a separate anox basin, but you're doubling your construction cost on it, and you're doubling your design costs. And it just causes, yeah, I think we're already in.
In hindsight, should you have said no? Keep.
They didn't want to tell me exactly what their idea was, so I couldn't say that. I thought it was cost savings. When they asked me that, I thought it was a cost savings measure. I didn't know it was like we got a better way to treat the water than the
Right.
other guys.
It only cost you a pretty penny.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I had just one question. The district will also need to hire an environmental firm to complete the CEQA.
Yeah, so there's depending on the design, I mean, we're looking at the original CEQA documents, and this second Biolac was in the original plan to have a second one. So there's some question on the level of CEQA that's needed, but there's also part of this project is a cross-country pipeline. Because right now there's not enough, the pipe going down the lower effluent pond is not big enough to handle the flows of this other water coming treatment plant. So we can't get the water down to the storage pond fast enough. So we got to put a bigger pipe. So this is through a wooded area, kind of between the canyons there. So there's a potential that there's some environmental concerns there that we have to look at.
Environmental and tribal.
Potentially, we have an existing pipeline there, so depending on the construction methods, we might,
That's,
there might be an exemption
that's
available.
the pipeline to Pond 7.
Yeah,
Move forward or don't we just-
Yeah, make a motion to approve this item, hire accepting a proposal and authorizing general manager in an agreement with Hydroscience for design and engineering services related to the Contenta wastewater treatment plant.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any public comment on this item? All right, no public comment. Let's go forward with polling the board, please.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, item 5, reports. We have a report on the June 2024 Operations Department. Damon, are you on? No.
So our ops managers are out, are unavailable this week, so it's just the written report that's in the agenda. So we'll take questions if there's any questions on that and respond the best we can.
I had one. I pulled the operations report from last month, and it was April 24th, 2024 water production. And in this report, it repeated April 24 water production, different figures.
That might just not, the title might just not have been changed. Should be. Yeah, especially if the numbers are different.
Yeah. But it said, you know, as I say, April 2024, so maybe there was just a mistake and it should have been May.
For June. May, possibly.
Yeah, I think it was just the title didn't get changed. But the numbers should be accurate.
Yeah, of course, because, you know, coming into summer, you're gonna have.
We're
you're
gonna see
create-
water
I mean,
consumption go
you know,
up.
make more, treat more water.
Right.
There'll be a big bump in the Copper Cove production as well because of that fire keeping up with the water tender requirements.
We'll get that corrected next month.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If you have any other questions on this?
Excellent report.
Excellent report, Damon. Okay, we're moving on to the general manager's report.
Mine should be pretty brief. Also, I do want to point out, I think we've talked about it in the past, but Kelly G put a lot of work into the new district website. I think it's significantly improved and it's created some efficiencies for staff as well. So he's done a great job on that. I think in particular, we've got a page up that is providing information and kind of frequent updates on the A to B transmission line project and the construction impacts that are going to be associated with that. We did a town hall last month where we told people that that would be available on the website. So trying to be make sure that our construction project information on the website is updated more frequently and more useful for the public. So we're trying to push people to that information. So I encourage you to take a look, click around the website. It's better than it was, and but also let us know if there's feedback. It's still still evolving, still a work in progress. So.
Just a suggestion, when we start to do the timing and road closure issues on AB transmission line, any signage that we have, can we do something to direct them to our website and so they can get a lot more information?
Yeah, we've had some discussions about signage, about us maybe making some appearances at events where the community is gathering and having some flyers that we can hand out that'll provide information by itself, because some people are not don't want to go to the website or whatever, but provide information that way, but also really try to drive people to the website, because that's where a lot of information will be. So yeah, I don't know if we put up signs for this project yet. It's not a grant funded project where we have the NASCAR sign that the grant funding agencies require us to put up, but we could do something like
Well, we know the route. I mean, we know the route, and if we just had 3 or 4 signs that would direct people to the website, they'd get a lot more information than any sign that we put up. In regards to schedule and timing and that sort of thing. So,
yeah, we can take a look at that.
thank you.
The signage ought to include the office number too, in case somebody doesn't have a computer, they can just call.
You guys and the 3 people here that don't have computers.
Those people are important too.
The one I love is when they issue the cooling center warnings on the 7 a.m. news for all the homeless folks that are watching TV, so they know where to go to the cooling center. It's like, oh, you guys are making a lot of progress here.
Is that a political statement?
It's reality, sadly.
Update on the bond that has been talked about for a couple of years now. There is going to be a bond on the ballot in November that's characterized as a climate change resilience adaptation and wildfire mitigation bond. Aqua's been pushing really hard, been very involved, and Mountain Counties has been advocating on this as well. Really involved in those discussions over the last couple of years, even to proposing a framework and funding amounts for different categories of water management funding. In the end, it was, I think, a little bit disappointing in terms of process, because it ended up getting passed in sort of the dark of night. We now have the rule that a bill has to be in print in its final form for 72 hours before the legislature can vote on it. So the bill was printed Saturday night, the weekend before 4th of July. At that point, there were no committee hearings where anybody could propose amendments, because they scheduled the vote for July 3rd. So there was no possibility of changes after that. So it was passed by the Assembly and the Senate on July 3rd. The governor and the lieutenant governor were out of town, so the Senate pro tem was the acting governor and signed it that day. So we have a bond that will be on the ballot in November that didn't get a lot of daylight, unfortunately, before it was passed. There there is still funding for water infrastructure in the bond, not at the levels that the water industry had been pushing for. But there is still a significant amount. I think it's around 600 million for drinking water, and then another billion for forest management and wildfire suppression efforts and some other climate change resiliency work that might provide funding for water agencies. The drinking water funding was heavily targeted towards Chrome 6 and PFAS, so probably not a lot of that available to Mountain County water agencies. And there's a mandate in the bond that 40% of it be spent in disadvantaged communities. So there's a lot of restrictions on even the funding that is available to water agencies, where that funding could go, which is what consistent with previous bonds, which means not much of that water ends up, or not much of that money ends up, rural county, mountain county water agencies. So there is some good forest management stuff. There's some things to like about it still. There is some funding available for that. And so there are, Mountain Counties agencies that are still supporting the bond. Mountain Counties Water Resources Association is supporting the bond. And I think that's a smart position for mountain counties to take, to be, hopefully to be at the table if the bond does pass, in terms of shaping the programs that will then provide that funding. So I think that's a good move for mountain counties. I don't think it necessarily means that, as a district, CCWD needs to take a position on it. So it's already done. Essentially, what's going to go to the voters in November. It's going to be a divisive issue. There's things to like about it and things to not like about it. So, we can bring it back to legal affairs next month, but I don't know that we necessarily need to take a position on it. But I'm glad that Mountain Counties is taking that role for us. Keep our interests at the table.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Did you?
No, when we initially talked about that, it was supposed to be a big to-do, and we're just gonna get all kinds of, positive news about it. And now you're saying that it's kind of,
Well, there
lost, yeah.
attitude
Just lost a lot of the glamour.
towards the I mean, last year in March at the Aqua Ledge Symposium, they were talking about possibly a $15 to $20 billion bond that was going to include, maybe half or more of that for water. And we ended up with a lot less than that, but a lot has changed over that
It's
period
still 10 billion. That's still a good size. It's not 15 to 20, but mountain counties did get in on the ground floor when it came on its way to the governor's desk. We did get a letter in on time, a few hours before the pro tem actually signed it into law. And I think that was and I was surprised that the Aqua State Ledge Committee took a neutral position on it at that same time and didn't get a letter of support in on it. Mountain Counties is positioned very, very well on this, and our argument through Mountain Counties Ledge Committee and our lobbyist is that 40% of the state's water comes from mountain counties, comes from those mountain counties, and there are several disadvantaged communities within that footprint as well. I think we're our big push at Mountain Counties is going to be for this to get some carve outs specifically for money to be spent in those mountain counties for those reasons.
Yeah, I think it's smart for mountain counties.
But it'll be on the ballot.
It will be on the ballot. Aqua's neutral on it.
That's
a lot of the big unions are neutral on it. Cal Reuse, the big statewide association, is neutral on it because they didn't get the recycled water funding that they were hoping for. So a lot of the water industry associations and the unions are all neutral on it. So it remains to be seen how the
that doesn't sound great for them to be neutral.
I was real surprised that Aqua was neutral, and I didn't understand that. I have talked to a couple of people and got a little bit better understanding. And it was just, I think they expected it to be so much larger.
Yeah, and specifically, some of the buckets of funding they were pushing for were cut down quite a bit. So water storage funding, groundwater management funding, water conveyance infrastructure funding, all that got slashed pretty significantly. So there's, Aqua has broader considerations, but I think Mountain Counties is smart to be at the table for this one.
Oh, absolutely.
The other update from a regulatory standpoint, the making water a making conservation a California way of life. The state board finally adopted the final regs on that. Staff, we met on it this week. We're going to prepare a presentation for the board, probably bring it back in August, just to kind of provide, we've given updates along the way, but give a summary of what the final rules were that were adopted and the implications for CCWD. So we'll bring that back probably in August. There is a interim city administrator in Angels Camp. Steve Williams is his name. He's a retired police chief. He's on a retired annuitant basis, I think. So it's temporary probably. I've got a meeting set up with him this week to touch base on Highway 4 water issues. So looking forward to connecting
What's his
with
name?
him. Steve Williams.
Let me jump in here. Did I understand you to say that you'll be meeting with him?
Yes.
To kind of flesh out ideas on that Highway 4 planning activities that we approved?
Yeah, I reached out to him, both to just welcome him to the county, introduce myself, make sure he knows we're available, for their water and wastewater, if he needs assistance with anything. But also, I want to make sure we don't lose momentum on the regional planning effort that all of our boards have adopted resolutions in support of, get him up to speed on that and make sure that continues to move forward. So looking forward to meeting with him. He was very responsive.
Just quickly, his background?
He's a retired police chief.
Oh.
So hopefully we can be of assistance when it comes to water and wastewater.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The next week we've got a CPPA meeting. Wednesday we have a couple of meetings, CPPA here in the morning and camera in the afternoon. Assuming there's a quorum for camera, we're still waiting for confirmation on that. But we'll hopefully we'll be meeting next Wednesday afternoon. And that's all I've got, unless there's questions for me.
Any other questions for Michael? Okay, let's look at the board reports, information, future agenda items. Bertha, do you have anything to
Oh,
report?
am I first?
Yes,
Oh, great.
you're always first.
Thank you. Of course, we had the most wonderful parade for the 4th of July on July the 6th, but that was, that's okay. And I just wanted to commend Kelly for doing just a great job and ask him to come up and just tell you briefly what it was all about.
I think you said it best. The parade was pretty great. We were the second to the last in line. The truck behind us was Paul Bertini Mechanical, and he had a water tender. So he was spraying. It was a very hot day, as we all know. The kids were loving it, but you might see some pictures with a truck behind a CCWD truck spraying water. That was not our truck, but it did fit with the theme, and it was a great parade, a good turnout, and thank you.
And so Kelly took care of us and loved it.
Great.
Very good.
Director Ratterman, do you have anything to report?
Sure, just Mountain County's events that I have coming up. An overnight tour of PCWA, Placer County Water Agencies. We organized a tour with PCWA and Mountain Counties for August 29th and 30th. I think it's only for the board. We're going to be at Hellhole Reservoir Dormitory. and doing tours in that area. Sounded very interesting. But we also in Placer County on the first week of or the second week of August, August 8th, and August 8th, we have a reception at Two Good Cellars in Placerville. And then El Dorado EDI, El Dorado Irrigation, EID, El Dorado Irrigation District is hosting our meeting the following morning. We are also putting together a tour, legislative tour with co-hosted by our Senator Alvarado Gill's office, which will be in the Murphys area, and a reception on October 3rd. And then another, it's a two-day event. And we had a meeting on that this morning. Kelly attended along with Joel and Jessica putting it together. It's going to include our McKay's Reservoir as well as 3/4 mile flume and then Murphy's Powerhouse. And I think Jessica is also pushing, and we probably will take a look at their water facility. Yeah, those are the 3 things I got coming up.
October 3rd, you said?
That's October 3rd and 4th in Murphy's. And in the August dates, this 8th and 9th, I think, in Placerville.
Do they store water in those cellars, or what do they do in those cellars?
At the Two Good Cellar, there'll be wine.
Yeah.
There'll be a bunch of wine.
The shot.
And the other one was at Hellhole or something? That sounds like
CCWA, that's their dormitory.
on Hellhole. Director Davidson, do you have anything?
No, I'm.
Okay.
We have our finance committee meeting next Tuesday, right?
We do.
And then the following Tuesday would be external relations.
Good.
That's it.
Okay. I don't have anything to report other than things are kind of settling down in Copperopolis after the fire. A lot of people breathing a sigh of relief, but okay. What was this? Oh, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to report that the real estate ad hoc committee, we had our first meeting on March 22nd of 2024. We reviewed multiple district-owned properties and decided to review a couple in detail. Starting with the rental house in Rancho Calaveras by the Jenny Lind Water Treatment Plant. Should we keep it, sell it? We have cultural constraints possibly. We have 55 acres in Valley Springs. It's up on the highway. Can we use it? No, this is Valley Springs. This is the 55 acres near the Hogan Dam Road. Yeah. Okay, I was confused because we have 15 acres up here. And so we're also looking at that. We did take a tour of the rental house in Rancho Calaveras, and there's some interesting possibilities there. And the second meeting was in May 3rd, 2024. We received a presentation from Ventura Energy Partners about leasing our 15-acre parcel in San Andreas with some acreage at our West Point wastewater treatment plant. The purpose of that was to discuss the possibility of putting a solar field on the property. The energy generator would then be, or the energy generated would then be purchased by PG&E, and the community around the solar field would receive power at a reduced rate, which might be up to 20% for the next 20 years. Be a great way to reduce cost to our customers. And unfortunately, in June, the CPUC voted to reject the program framework, which would allow the community solar project to earn project revenues. Instead, they are focusing on refurbishing a few solar programs, which have been largely unsuccessful in the past. The programs are only eligible for projects within 5 miles of the California Disadvantaged disadvantaged community. And this has unfortunately,
I don't understand. Is that, this is, have you seen this memo, Michael?
No. We can bring that back.
Yeah, we need to meet again because it really doesn't make any sense. Both San Andreas and West Point are heavily disadvantaged communities, and both of these properties within 5 miles of those communities. And so I'm really not quite sure why we don't fit into that, the solar program, which sounded like a great idea. And I don't know if it's off the table now.
No, we can bring it back.
In the 55 acres and mitigation bank, I know our guy is already, the guy we talked to has already been back in touch with us, and
Yeah.
he should be working on that by now.
What,
And one thing I don't see in here is a realtor, realtors that we were gonna talk to about the other property. Well, one of them's someone already approached us to want to buy a section, I think 1.5 acres of property in West Point.
in Volcano.
why don't we
Yeah.
agendize an update after our next ad hoc committee meeting?
Okay.
Okay, so,
'Cause I'd be surprised if that solar program is totally off the, and it sounded like $1 million, we looking to get.
We've been down that solar road before on that property.
These are totally different projects that would actually bring money, payments.
Oh.
Like blood pressure monitor.
I thought it was my pacemaker. Oh, don't joke about that.
Small alarm time to.
Okay, well,
Wake up.
let's summarize this by saying the next real estate ad hoc committee meeting is scheduled for a date to be determined.
Let's determine that before we leave here.
Sure.
Right now?
No, well, before we leave.
Okay, all right. Well, we are announcing now that we have the next board meeting on Wednesday, July 24th, and then followed by August 14th. That another regular board meeting. Now we're going into a closed session conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to subdivision D2 of Government Code 54956.9. 2 potential cases will be discussed, and we will be back to report any reportable action.